let's all shed a quick tear. This is the first pro staff since Federer's retirement. Wilson has decided that's the perfect time to give us a new racket in the line though, so let's all welcome in the brand new Wilson Pro Staff X. The X weighs 315 grams, has a 100 square inch head size, and a 16 by 19 string pattern. Now, I haven't actually seen the beam thickness, but giving it the old eyeball test, I would say it's somewhere between 22 and 23 millimeters. Let's say it's 22.46. That sounds about right. The swing weight came out to 334 on our RDC machine. Now, obviously that's a pretty hefty static and swing weight, and especially on a 100 square inch head size, makes it quite a beast of a racket. As soon as I took it off my stringing machine, held it in my hand, it just felt like an absolute hammer. There's a lot of weight concentrated up there. Now, looking at the tech side of things, Wilson has added their paradigm bending to this racket. From what I understand, it's supposed to affect how the racket actually flexes on impact. Apparently, it's supposed to bend more in the throat and less in the hoop. 69% here, 31% there. That's very technical numbers. And Wilson claims it's supposed to make it feel more like the old Pro Staff 90s. I guess in theory that should stabilize the racket because less movement in the hoop also means less fluttering there. And I gotta say, they have nailed the stability here. Obviously, the high static and swing weight will help stabilize the frame, no question, but it just felt so solid on impact. I never had any fluttering whatsoever. I actually think that's a really good way to describe the Pro Staff line in general, would be the word solid. It's not as easy as like the Aero equals spin or the Prestige equals control, but solid is something that I've always felt when hitting with a Pro Staff. It's definitely the case again here. Also, because it's a 100 square inch head size, the sweet spot's definitely a little bit bigger than on more traditional Pro Staffs. I like what Wilson's doing here. It's just making the line a little bit more accessible for a wider variety of people. People obviously love the Pro Staff. It's what Federer used, it's what Sampras used. So just making it more accessible is a good call. Let's talk about power. Now, obviously, when you have a high swing weight and a 100 square inch head size, you should be able to hit a really hard ball. And the Pro Staff X hits a really hard ball. It does have a fairly high launch angle. I wouldn't say quite as high as what you've got on the Clash or the Pure Drive, but still fairly high. So when you catch it right, you can absolutely launch it. I personally had a bit of a hard time controlling all that power because it's got a bigger head size and a heavier swing weight. It definitely feels a little bit sluggish through the air, and I prefer those more snappy, whippy rackets. So my timing was a little bit off, but for those of you who don't mind a heavy racket like this, it's objectively really good from a control standpoint. Wilson's put their string mapping stuff in there, which is basically just a tighter string bed in the middle of the sweet spot. So that definitely helps make the racket feel super consistent, just a solid, again, I'm using the word solid a lot, but it's a solid racket, what can I say? And it also feels quite soft. It came in at around 61, 62 RA on our stiffness scale, but to me it definitely felt a little bit softer than that. That's probably Wilson's 45 grade at work. I felt that with previous rackets as well. I actually think this one feels very similar to the previous Pro Staff, maybe even a touch softer because of all that paradigm bending technology. I wouldn't necessarily call it point and shoot, but because of that softness, you do get an extra ability to control the ball on impact that you don't really get with other 100 square inch head sizes. But it does have a pretty big sweet spot, so you don't necessarily get that gorgeous dopamine hit you get with small sweet spot rackets, but it still does feel quite nice. From a spin perspective, it's definitely not the most spin-friendly racket out there. Now, I've been playing with actual spin rackets for like a month and a half now, so take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. It might not be the most fair comparison right now, but because it is quite sluggish through the air, you don't get that effortless ability to kind of brush up on your shots. You kind of have to stay fairly uniform throughout. At least that's what I thought. Also, because it's so stable, that kind of comes at the expense of some string movement. There isn't tons of snapback here, so you don't get a bunch of motion in your string bed to just whack it at the ball. But it is still a 60-19, so you can definitely put spin on your shots. Overall, I think the X is a great racket for those big hitters who might like to swing a little bit slower and let the mass of the frame actually do the work on the ball. It definitely is a lot of racket to swing, but it's so rewarding when you hit it well, and that stability, consistency, and solidity are just fantastic when you're dialed in. Thanks for watching, everybody. We've also got a written review linked in the description, or come visit us at racketsandrunners.ca.